Welcome back to the Power Project. I'm your host, Brandy Voth. For those of you that know me, and for those of you that are tuning in, I am a social entrepreneur, I'm a podcast host, I'm an author, and I am passionate about inspiring women to lead purpose-filled lives and own their God-given power. One of the things that really fuels me is being able to create solutions to problems. I love looking at something and trying to analyze how we can best meet the needs in that space. And one of those that is so heavy on my heart currently is that of transitional employment. Working with women that have gone through transitional programs that are survivors of trafficking. I see them go through these programs and then need to find employment, gainful employment that oftentimes our society does not make easy or available for them to be able to access. So I've created this social enterprise hat company, the Power Hat Company, and we are creating some really beautiful hats, but we're also providing an opportunity for traffic survivors to be able to have transitional employment and earn income while they're walking through these programs, after graduation from the program, and while they're transitioning into other areas of employment and entrepreneurship in life. We're able to also support organizations that are fighting human trafficking with this business and with this company. And it's a passion project that is so heavy on my heart and so present in the forefront of my mind right now. So I've been speaking to other people that have gone before me, other people that have been in the fight longer than I have, other people that know far more than I do on the subject, because I firmly believe that we learn from the journeys of those who have walked before us. So my guest today is one that I have been wanting to speak with for quite some time. I followed her work for a very extensive period of time on social media, and I was so blessed and honored to have her on the show. However, our pre-interview ended up taking off so well, and we jumped into all of the heavy-hitting topics right off the bat. So I never even gave her a proper introduction. In all honesty, she didn't even realize we were recording the podcast at the time. I know you're going to love this conversation that I have with Dr. Vanessa Bouché. She's been studying the issue of human trafficking since 1999, and her explorations of this topic have taken her all over the globe, from Latin America to Europe and Asia. She's created humantraffickingdata.org, which is an open access and searchable database of federal human trafficking prosecutions in the U.S. She's interviewed convicted traffickers in federal prisons. She's surveyed hundreds of survivors, and she's consulted with a variety of international organizations and NGOs. Her most recent project, however, is that of Savhera, which she has co-founded. It's a premium social impact aromatherapy brand that provides sustainable living wage professional jobs to survivors of sex trafficking in India and the US. My conversation with Vanessa in this episode was so fascinating. I'm absolutely obsessed with learning from the really smart people doing the really big things. I know that you're going to enjoy this as well, so I just ask that you lean in and listen and start to have ideas and conversations with others about what you too can do to help provide transitional employment, to help provide entrepreneurship, to be able to give someone a hand up that may not otherwise find that in society. So without further ado, let's jump right into my conversation with Dr. Vanessa Bouché.
I learned about trafficking when I was in college in about 1999. And in turn, long story, it kind of rocked my world as it does a lot of people. But that was still when it was very new. Not a lot of people even knew about it. I happened to come across Gary Haugen's book, The Good News About Injustice. This was in 1999, and he had just published the book. On the heels of that, I started diving into as much literature as I could find on the subject of modern day slavery and forced labor, child marriage. I was also at this time in college a budding feminist, and so all of the issues around gender-based violence, and then particularly from a faith perspective, Gary Haugen and a lot of the other writing that he was recommending in the late 90s, I was starting to wrap my mind around as well. So from a biblical perspective, like, what does biblical justice look like? And fast forward to 2003, 2003, I did an internship with the State Department at the embassy in Guatemala, and participated in writing portions of the trafficking in persons report for Guatemala. But someone from the tip office in DC came down and wanted to go out on the street and see what trafficking looked like on the ground. And so I went out with him on the street of Guatemala City with an NGO that was kind of escorting us around. And that was when I saw with my own two eyes for the very first time the gravity and evil of trafficking face to face. And I got sick to my stomach, quite literally sick to my stomach. And it was the first time too in my life that I understood what it meant to cry out for Jesus to return. Because prior to that, I had a very, very sheltered, privileged upbringing. And I always kind of, read about that in scripture, that we ought to want the hastening of the return of the Messiah. But I always was like, but can you wait until I have kids? Or can you wait until I experience, until I see more of the world? Or can you wait until, it was very, very self-centered, privilegey, Western way of thinking. And so, that was the first time that I was like, oh, wow, this is what God sees from his perspective, not just in Guatemala, but across the globe all day, every day. And he's been seeing it from the beginning of time since he first created us. This is sin. This is like sin. And that's when I was like, oh, wow, like, we really, really messed up your creation and you really need to return, like, immediately. So it not only changed my perspective, it solidified my desire to want to work on this issue. But it also really grew my faith simultaneously. So, at the same time, though, I realized that I don't think that I literally have the stomach to maybe be the one on the front lines. Since then, I've traveled a ton more and I've seen a ton more. And so unfortunately, over time, you do start to get desensitized. And then I also am a firm believer that if you're going to work on this issue, you have to see it face to face. You just have to. So, and that doesn't mean like all the time, it doesn't mean putting yourself out there every single day. But I do think that it's imperative. So anyway, that happened in 2003. I was simultaneously pursuing a career track in intelligence. And so I ended up going to work for the CIA, actually, for a period of time. And then I ended up going to get my PhD. And it was around 2008 that between like 1999 and 2008, those like 9 or 10 years, I was reading every book that was coming out on trafficking. And I can still to this day, like, list all of the ones that were influential in my thinking and influential in the way that I was just analyzing the issue, thinking about the issue, and also knowing at the same time that I'm also like an intercessor for the issue. And I didn't know to what extent I was going to work, like, to make a living working on this issue of trafficking, or if it was just going to be something that I continue to remain engaged in on the side, if you will. And so, but it was in 2008 that I realized that all of the research or all of the books that I had been reading up to that point were very journalistic in nature. They lacked methodological rigor and quantitative rigor, and they were mostly internationally focused, and there was very little at that time understood about and written about trafficking in the United States. So I took that and I decided that I was going to start, using my newly gained statistical quantitative method skills to bring some kind of semblance to bear of understanding trafficking in the US. I didn't know where to start, so I just randomly started somewhere. And I mean, over time since then, I've just done a ton of research on trafficking in the US, but I also started to expand my portfolio to other parts of the world. And then I have been, I've been a professor at TCU for the last 8 years and have been publishing on trafficking, been getting federal grants to do research on it. And I also started taking students to India on a study abroad to study transnational human trafficking. And it was on my third trip with students to India that we were sitting in the medical clinic in the red light district in Delhi. And a woman said to me, why should I talk to you? Why should I share anything about my story with you? You are no different than the people that come and exploit us for our bodies, only you're exploiting us for our story. And I was like, I completely understand how you feel that way. That is completely legitimate. What is it that you need? And she said, I need dignified employment to get out of this dirty business. And so I said, I'd like to help you do that. And when I told her that, I planned on finding a social enterprise in Delhi and connecting her to it. And then I've made good on my promise. I've done my job and I'm out. And so for 6 months, I exhausted all of my connections, not only in Delhi, but across all of India, talking to other friends and social enterprises that I know working in other parts of India. Do you guys know anything in Delhi close enough to the red light district that the women could get there, et cetera, et cetera? No one knew of anything. And this was I was talking to everyone that would know if there was something in Delhi. I did not want to start something. I was very, very, very reluctant. And then miraculously, I ended up meeting one of the co-founders of Savhera. She moved to the Dallas-Fort Worth area from Calcutta, India. She wanted to do research on human trafficking. She Googled human trafficking research Texas just to see if she could find someone that was doing that work. And that's how she found me. Sent me a cold email, attached her resume. She's totally brilliant, incredible, just credentials. And so she started working with me on research. But about a month into her working with me on research, I said, Ushri, I have to tell you about this other problem that I have. And by this time, it had been 6 months that had gone by. And I said, I've been asking everybody, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know what to do. And she said, well, Vanessa, let's start something. And I was like, no.
Yep, I understand.
No. And so, but anyway, with Ushri on board, and then, my husband also being like, we're just going to have to make this happen. We were off to the races. And so now we officially launched our e-commerce site in September of 2019. So we're not quite a year old as far as our operations go. We are employing right now 11 survivors combined in the US and in India. And they're all actual Savhera employees. So they're all on payroll. They actually, get their paycheck direct deposited to their bank accounts. So our Savhera is very, very different from many, many other companies. We're in this place of straddling nonprofit, for-profit. We are for-profit. And there are new business models that are beginning to emerge that understand this relationship between business as a force for good, not just as a give back company, right? Not just as a company that says, oh, we are, socially responsible because we donate some to, the local, whatever, big brothers, big sisters, or whatever, name the thing. Or like, oh, we are environmentally sustainable because we do X, Y, and Z. Like, that's great. And more corporations need to be doing that, hands down. But we are like, our DNA is, investing in people, and investing in people that really nobody else has wanted to invest in for a variety of reasons, and the barriers to employment are somewhat similar, but also somewhat different between our employees in India and our employees in the United States. But nevertheless, like we know that survivors of trafficking face significant barriers to employment, and there's a lot of reasons why. And I also firmly believe that these are some of the most resilient, bright, talented human beings on the planet. I mean, everybody has their gifting, but I believe that there's a reason in the spiritual realm, and I can't talk to this about everybody, but like there's a reason in the spiritual realm why they're like this under someone's thumb. And it's because they're a threat to the kingdom. If they actually are given the opportunity to live a dignified life, they are dangerous. Like they're
amen.
So powerful. They're powerful human beings. They are so talented. And hard workers, and they've been through so much, and yet they've emerged from the dust. Like they're amazing people to me. And I think that they are so worthy and so worth being invested in. And so, and we think we can do that and still make a profit as a company, because we're still a startup. We're not planning to be profitable for at least 3 to 5 years, but actually like in a social enterprise type of setting, it may be longer. I don't know. It's still very much proof of concept, but I'm super excited about proving that concept out and replicating so that it can be replicated over and over and over again with women all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, you're speaking all my love language, like every bit of it.
Yeah.
Because so I teach a weekly class at an aftercare home in North Texas, and it's a business class. It's the Jobs for Life class that is part of their curriculum. But in that we do life coaching, we do mindset coaching, because it's like you're teaching someone to build a resume, and you're having them identify their skills when it's someone that has had a lifetime of trauma and abuse, and they have been told they're not valuable, and they're not right, and they're not full of purpose. Right. And so, what I kept seeing over and over again, the obstacles that I would see were the fact that we don't have education for a job that is a gainful employment job that's going to attach us to some type of purpose, or they had criminal records. And I've been doing a pretty deep dive, and I'm sure you have statistics that you could share at some point. I've been really researching the unemployment rate for just individuals with criminal records alone.
Yeah.
Versus, and in this economic crisis that we're in, it's compounded right now.
Yeah.
And so we would go through this program, this 9 to 12 month program, and we're building them up and teaching them that they're worthy. And then they graduate and they can't find a job.
They still can't get a job.
Yeah.
Totally. Yep.
And so I'm like, I was saying for a couple of years, like, guys, we have to, I tell everyone what I've seen personally, and I've been involved in the cause for the past 3 years. Like, it literally was never anything that I recognized. And then when I did, I thought it was an international problem, not a national, local problem.
Right.
And I kept saying, like, look, we've realized there's a problem in the United States. We moved into like the reach and rescue phase. Then we moved into restoration phase. And then now we're in that piece where the rehabilitation, the walking through, the providing mentorship, and talking to people who have resources of business owners that can build businesses. Like, let's talk to people about why we need to hire these people, why we need to give the marginalized individuals an opportunity, right? Like, not a hand, but a hand up.
Yeah.
And so that's been one of the greatest obstacles that we have. And it's like, these girls are like, okay, I'm working on turning my life around, but guess what? I have to pay my rent, and I have to pay for a car to get to work. And I have to pay court fees to try to get kids back that I haven't seen, you know? And so I think that, I mean, 100% what you're doing is spot on. But I do know that when I started asking people questions about it, the answer was, well, in India, you know, what I was told, they would be more like ostracized from society. So they wouldn't be like re-entering a workspace of working side by side with others, right? They said, but in the US, they're open to be, you know, within the community and society, fully functioning. It was a different re-entry, right? Like a different transition. So what have you seen the difference between in the US, someone that has gone through a program, gone through a transitional living program, they're ready to re-enter the world, they're doing great, they're healthy, they're well, but they're struggling with the job, versus someone in India that has either gotten out of the trade or is trying to get out of the trade? What's the two major differences that you see with transitioning into gainful employment?
So let's see. In India, one of the biggest differences is illiteracy. So not a single one of the women that we currently employ there has ever had formal education.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a huge barrier for any type of employment. The other thing is that they've never had formal education, which means that they're totally illiterate, and they've never even been able to keep most of the money that they have or have earned. And so therefore they've never had a bank account. Mm-hmm. They don't know, they have no idea how to budget. They don't know how to use an ATM machine. They don't, you know, they've been living in the brothel probably since, I mean, on average, since they were like, you know, 15 or whatever. And so, they don't know how to use public transportation. They don't know how to read street signs even, or bus signs to even know how to use public transportation. Completely and utterly isolated and confined to the brothel. And because of that, our program in India looks a little bit different than it does in the United States, because we have to teach them how to read and write. Like, I am a firm believer that no matter what level you're at in a company structure, and whether that company is decentralized or hierarchical, I'm a firm believer that no matter what level you're at, you need to see the big picture. You need to know the big picture. You need to see the goal, and you need to know what goal you're working towards. It's not good enough to give someone, you know, a bunch of paper and a stapler and say, here, staple this. I am a firm believer that they need to know why they're stapling that. You know, like what for? What is this going to be used for? What's the purpose? And so no matter what level they're at in the company, I want them to see the big picture, know the big picture, and I want them to be able to move up in the company. And so as they master whatever level they're at. So in India, we actually have developed a human development model that is called PIES, physical, intellectual, economic, and spiritual. is what it stands for. And we take a baseline assessment of where they're at on each of those indicators when they first come to us. And then we regularly monitor, how they're doing on each of those indicators. But we've built a curriculum around each of those things that allows us to, allows them to progress. And when they first come to us, like each of those indicators of the PIES model has 3 different levels, and there's the micro level, the meso level, the macro level. And what we want to see is them moving out into the macro level as they grow. And so physical includes things like their physical health, right? Have they seen a doctor? Are they on medication for what they need to be? How are their teeth? Like, have they seen a dentist? Like, do they need dentures? Like all the kind of physical stuff. And then in addition to that, physical is their physical safety. So are they still living in the brothel? And if so, we have a goal that all of our employees are able to save enough money to move out of the brothel within 3 months of employment with us. That's our goal. And so far, that's happened for every single one of our employees. Within 3 months, they are out. We have a human development manager that we've hired who's full-time just to manage all of the things on the PIES model for our employees, helping them find a place to live that they can afford, that they can move out, that's safe, allows them to still get to work, So that's another thing about physical is physical safety. A third thing about physical is being able to actually move around your city and know how to do it. Mobility is part of the physical aspect of the model. And so, but in order to do that, they have to know how to read and write. So that takes us into the intellectual. And so we've been working with them on reading and writing and doing basic math. And that's huge because that opens up a whole world to them that they never even knew existed. Now, all of a sudden, they can read street signs. They can read metro signs. They know how to get from place to place. We teach them how to read a map as well and to understand north, south, east, west. And where are you in relation to other parts of the city? Delhi is massive. It's gigantic. And so they have no idea where they're located within Delhi and where our office is vis-a-vis, where they live. And so we teach them all of that kind of stuff, intellectual. And then economic, we walk them through a budgeting process. So and again, intellectual is so imperative as a precursor to that because you can't do a budget if you can't do math. And so, but we do a budget with them and we set financial goals for them to save. We also advocate for them if there's any they call them government schemes in India, but if there's any scheme that they're eligible for economically, we help them access that scheme because, they don't know about the government. They don't know how to access certain things that they have rights to. If it's an entitlement type of program. So we help them access that. And then most importantly, we set them up with a bank account and we teach them how to use the ATM machine. And that is huge. The level of confidence and independence that provides them, that all of a sudden they're economically included in the formal sector. It's just mind blowing to them that they have a bank account. They can access an account and they can manage their own money. That's just been amazing. And then spiritual is the micro level of that is inner healing. And one of the ways that we facilitate that is that we, as a social enterprise that is founded for the sole purpose of employing women who have experienced extreme sexual trauma, we are a values-driven company and everything we do revolves around our values. And so we published a book of meditations, and the book of meditations is based on our values as a company. And we read one meditation a day as an entire team. So, in India, they do it separate from the United States because obviously the time difference, but we reflect on one value every day as a company. And so at 11 o'clock, whether you're in India or whether you're in the United States, 11 a.m., we stop what we're doing and we do a reflection or a meditation. And that's one of the ways that we're helping them to develop self-knowledge, self-awareness, and inner healing. But that is in India, because it is very different. They just given the lack of ability to read and their complete, total, utter social exclusion, we have to manage our relationship with them and how we serve them as a company in a different way than we do in the US. In the US, what's really interesting is, well, a couple things. First of all, because so far we haven't had to deal with illiteracy as a problem. The literacy rate across the U.S., regardless of socioeconomic status, tends to be high. Of course, it's lower in lower SES, situations, but it does tend to be high. And so illiteracy is not a problem that I anticipate encountering in large numbers in the United States, which is a beautiful thing, because that means that they're able to do work that is beyond working with their hands. So my vision and goal, and so far we've been able to do this, is to train them in other functions of the business. So that require, use of a computer as opposed to, use of your hands. But one thing that is also different in the U.S. than it is in India is that in the U.S., the women are significantly more likely to have some kind of criminal record, whereas in India, we only have one employee of all 7 of them that have an issue currently with the criminal justice system, and it's going to be dismissed, but it's not as common there as it is here. So that's an issue, you're much more likely to have to employ survivors in the U.S. that have a criminal history for, right or wrong, it's just a reality. The second issue that's more prevalent among survivors in the U.S. than in India is drug abuse or substance abuse. And, for whatever reason, it's, the women in the brothels in India are not on drugs. They're not on drugs. So that's a huge barrier that we have in the US in working with survivors that we don't have. So things like relapse, mm-hmm. That's a huge problem for survivors in the US. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons they end up going back to the life. If they get clean and then they relapse, it's just a way to, take care of your drug problem. Mm-hmm. And that's not an issue in India. So it's interesting because there's things about working with survivors in India that are barriers that we have there that we don't have here. But then there's barriers that we have here that we don't have there.
Yeah. And do you think, and if I speak out of line, for sure, correct me, but do you think it looks like the reason that the drug abuse isn't as big of a problem in India as it is here is because women as a whole are more empowered here, and you can control them. In order to control them, it almost requires getting them hooked on drugs, right? Do you think it's the difference in the culture as a whole and what women are capable of or empowered to do?
I don't think so. Because part of the thing in the US with survivors is depending on the level of trafficking. So depending on whether you are doing street prostitution or survival sex versus an escort, That really determines the likelihood that you're even going to be on drugs, or that your trafficker will let you be on drugs. So survival sex obviously is all about like drugs, and street level prostitution, there's much more likely for women to be doing drugs. Whereas higher end, like the traffickers and pimps do not want them on drugs, because they want clean, sober women to service their high end like clients that are millionaires, politicians, professional athletes, bankers, you know?
Yeah. And we've seen the gamut, you know, like the women that I've worked with. And I always tell them when we start out, like, I'm not privy to their backstory, and I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care about where you came from. I care about where you are today. But throughout working with them, you know, 9 to 12 months, and then staying in relationship with them after they graduate, it's almost like after they graduate, they're like, well, let me tell you the whole story. You should really know the whole story, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, we've seen it all. I've seen every level of it. And the majority, I mean, I'm going to say like 90% are, you know, have a drug addiction when they come to the house. And you're 100% right. We had a girl that was clean and sober for 2.5 years, was in the program on her own choice, not court appointed or anything. And, left the program when she was really close to graduation, decided she was just going to go home to her brother because she had done well. She had, you know, been clean and sober for this long, and she was doing great, and she was super motivated. Literally within 1 week, she was back on drugs. She had been kicked out of her brother's house. She was back to being trafficked. She had OD'd twice. Like, and you're just like, oh, how did we get here? Like,
yeah. It's so sad. It's so sad. Yeah. And that's like, like the drug situation is a huge, it's so huge. And it is a really big difference. Like, you just don't see that in India as much.
So how do you,
I've never seen it.
That's crazy to me. Like, it's wild to me, because that's all I know of like trafficking, is that there's always, you know, drug abuse.
Always drugs involved. I know. It's crazy. That is a huge difference between the two. And I wonder, I really wonder, I don't know. I have thought about this of like, why do we see such a difference? It's not like there's no drugs in India. You know what I mean? I mean, Indians certainly do drugs. I really think that it's access, and like, because drugs, especially certain drugs, cost money, you know? And so they just don't have the availability. And in some ways, I don't know, I want to think about this more. Cause I definitely have been like, that's so weird. And I kind of have chalked it up to the fact that, well, drugs are expensive. And if you don't have access in those like networks because you're poor, you know, then, you know, and the brothel owners are the traffickers. They're not going to be buying girls drugs. Like, they can't spend their money on that, especially because they don't need to. They have control of their women in the brothels without it. So,
it's almost just a different approach of trafficking, because I mean, you know, that's where it starts here, is that, you know, the guy gets her hooked on drugs, and, you know, that's the easiest way. We always talk in the aftercare home. Our previous director said, you've seen the picture of the girl that it's like the universal picture for trafficking. The girl's in handcuffs, you know, in a dark corner. And she's like, they don't need to have the handcuffs on. They need to have the needle in the arm for the picture. Yeah. Because you know, that's what we see. And very intriguing. Like, I mean, it's very interesting. And that brings me to something that I wanted to like ask you about, because what I see personally, so I work with A21 at a minuscule level, right? And then I work super hands-on locally. So I see what we do in our other countries, and I'm friends with the previous Bulgaria director and the previous Greece director. And so I see what they do on the forefront of fighting and the reach, rescue, restoration piece that they walk through. And then I see what our girls, and it seems like, to me personally, like the recidivism rate is much higher in our American programs. And it's the ones in our Greece, they're grateful to be in a program, to have a house, to, be safe and be protected. And they almost like, they don't necessarily want to run back. Whereas in America, I came into this with, the lens of privilege over my eyes, where I'm like, oh, these girls are going to be so grateful to be in this program. There's no way they would ever go back to this life of like trauma and abuse. And when I first came in and got really heavily involved, it rocked my world when they would leave. I'm like, why? But why? Why would you go back?
Yeah.
And my personal thought process on this is, just from doing the work and observing, is that we as a whole in America are a very entitled community. Even the people that have been through the worst trauma here still have a sense of entitlement. And it's almost like, in order to stay dependent upon God, we have to stay attached to others that are dependent upon God, right? Like when we have all the money in the world and all the cushy house in the world and all the beautiful things, we need to make sure we're in the trenches, like helping the people that He's sent us to help. So the women that go through the program that I'm at, they've been through like just about the worst type of hell you can possibly go through in the United States. In the United States, right? But then I've seen people in Greece and India go through so much, and I hate to even put a level on it. I'm not trying to put a level of trauma or abuse by any means.
Yeah.
But I've been saying for a while, my vision overall is eventually to be able to take the girls that have gone through our program to India and work with the organizations there, like serve those survivors, right? Serve them and see what they're going through. And maybe in that we can start to have them serving others in a way to where that we take away that level of some type of entitlement, if that makes any sense to you.
It does, but it totally does. I think though that's part of our PIES model, like in the meso level, like once they get out to that meso level, the meso level is all about them being able to give back. Because when you're in fight or flight, you can't, it's the immediate, it's me, it's now, you cannot think past that,
Correct.
But the goal for any restoration, all restoration, should be getting them to a point of giving back, because they're now full and they're filled up. So they have something to give out, to pour out. And so, I mean, yes, I definitely think that like having survivors here, like travel and see other parts of the world, and the privilege that we enjoy in this country, even when you have been through hard things, like it's probably, I mean, I agree with you. I have a very hard time. All trauma is bad, period,
Yes.
And some humans are given a little bit more strength to get through certain levels of trauma than others, but yes, I think but I think that would be part of, like, if you think about it in terms of the PIES model, that would be part of, like, okay, they're finally out here in the meso level to a place where they can see, encourage, understand, appreciate, and give back. But I want that for our team members in India too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No. So I think and I'm having conversations with different people, because I'm sure, I don't know how your brain works. Mine is constantly like firing the next, like, this is the plan, right? Like, this is our, like, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year, like, this is where we're going with it. Right.
And like it's a blessing and a curse.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I know. Like 3 a.m. when you're laying in bed and all the ideas are firing away and you're like, God, just let me go to sleep. I'll do it tomorrow.
I understand. So that's what I'm always like, I have these like end goals of things that I would like to see come to fruition, like in the meso space, like what you're talking about.
Right.
But what I am seeing that because I preach this constantly when I'm doing the class and the curriculum with the girls, and I have started getting them, like trying to get them plugged in with other organizations, because different ones in the program want to serve the homeless community and they want to feed the homeless, and different ones want to do prison, outreach. And so plugging them in where they can serve, like where
That's
they
great.
are right now, I believe helps with the restoration piece.
It does. Absolutely.
But we have one girl who just graduated, and she's going to become a peer support for other girls going through the program. And she's going to be
so great.
So that's, I love seeing when we have collaborations, both like locally and globally. But tell me what your, so Savhera Oils is the company. So you guys, the oils, do you guys manufacture the oils? Do you have a manufacturing facility, or is it more of outsourced? How does that work?
So, we had to revise our business model. When we first started, our plan was to source most of the oils in India and have our women there do like the bottling, labeling, capping, and then export, mostly for sale in the US market. It turned out to be a really, really bad idea. It was a failed business model, big time.
Well, we learn from every single failure, so that's okay.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I mean, this whole thing has been one learning after another. And I'm so thankful for the failure. I mean, actually, because it forces you to innovate and stay nimble and open-minded. So that failed terribly. What we ended up deciding to do was work with a co-manufacturer for the oils in the US. So the oils are sourced globally, and we work with a co-manufacturer in California to do our bottling, labeling, capping. And then the women in India are actually making all of our packaging for our starter kits and our mini kits. And so right now I'm working on mini kits because Ava, one of our team members, is on vacation, and this is normally her job. And so she's gone and we ran out. So here I am. But they make these really beautiful boxes using organic. I'm really big on supply chain. And so we're using handmade paper that's organic and made by, it's organic cotton. So no trees are being cut down. And it's made by women in tribal areas of India as an economic empowerment program. So that's where the paper is coming from for the boxes, which is super exciting. And then the women are and then our ladies actually construct the boxes. So they have gotten really, really good at making and designing boxes, which is super cool. They also make our starter kit boxes. So they're doing a lot of our packaging, making a lot of our packaging, but they're also started making diffusing jewelry. Mm-hmm. So jewelry right now, they're working with clay. And so they're making clay jewelry where you put essential oils on it. And the essential oils actually, you can smell them. Like, let's say it's a necklace on a pendant. You can smell them for at least like 4 hours on your neck, which is longer than it would last if you could just put it on your skin. Yeah. So they are in the process. Actually, I just got our very first prototypes of our jewelry designs in the mail earlier this week, and sent them a long email with feedback. And so we're hoping to launch the jewelry line in the next couple months.
That's awesome.
Which is super exciting. And then the survivors that we employ in the United States, they are so Ava does all of our fulfillment activities of our online orders that come through. So she does all fulfillment. She manages all of our inventory. she does most of our customer service. And she makes a lot of homemade products for us that we sell here locally at like the Dallas. We're starting just by selling at the Dallas Farmers Market. But I have, we have our strategic plan that we're working towards of how this is going to look like in the future. But right now she is making all of our handmade products. So she is making beard oil, bug spray, hand purifier, shower mist. I think that's it for now. So she's she has her hands in a lot of different things, but that girl has risen to the occasion. It's really amazing to see how far she's come. She started with us when we first launched in September, and she had just graduated from her restoration program. She was at Valiant Hearts, and she did not know how to use email. She didn't know she had never seen a spreadsheet before. She just didn't know how to do anything. And, she didn't know Google Docs. Nothing.
Yeah.
And now she is like the queen of all of these things and is starting college in the fall. So,
oh my gosh, that's amazing. So, yeah. So where do you, because I've said that the whole vision is, provide transitional employment that they can do while they're in the program right now, whether they're here for a month or a year, something.
Yeah.
That they do, right.
Yeah.
But the overall encompassing goal is obviously have them full-time on payroll, and then also have community mentors that are teaching them business skills along the way, teaching them QuickBooks and teaching them online marketing. And so who do you bring into like someone who doesn't know how to do email or do a spreadsheet? Who teaches that?
Me.
When do you sleep?
Girl, I'm going to tell you, I did just say recently that we're going to have to hire, eventually we're going to have to hire, kind of like what we have in India, a human development manager, but the equivalent of that here in the US, we can't afford to right now. And so we're flying by the seat of our pants. And, obviously my husband and I we've invested our own money in the company and a ridiculous amount of our time. And, it's not sustainable, the way that, but it's a startup. You just do, you just do what you have to do. My dad was the CEO of a large, hundreds of millions of dollars a year, publicly traded company. And he keeps asking me questions as though we're this mature company, and I'm like, Dad, and he's like, Vanessa, you can't be doing blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
You need to be thinking 3 years down. And I'm like, Dad, I know, but right now we just got to keep the lights on, we're doing what we got to do to keep it going. So right now it's me doing all of that.
So we're going to put a little plug out into the universe that if you are feeling led or called and you would like to be some type of a mentor support to help Vanessa teach people how to do business and bookkeeping and things like that, then, hit her up. Cause I think, and I went into it with having people that have said I'll come in and I'll teach the girls, because spreadsheets are my version of a really awful day. And so, there are things that I've done it because I've had to, right? Building other businesses. I've learned, I never did a desk or an office job until I had to for one of our companies. And so I've learned it, I've done it, but I don't want to keep teaching that and doing that. So I've 100% pulled people in and been this is what, you're going to teach photography for the website and you're going to teach bookkeeping. So I understand. I totally get it. But you have to find the people that support the cause, that are willing to say hey, I'll lend my services to help you out, because every single bit goes back into the company, especially right now. And it does look completely different with a social enterprise versus just a standard business, right?
It's very different. It's very, very different. Yeah.
So what is we talked about the jewelry line. We talked about some of the things that you're wanting to bring out in 2021. What are you most excited for the future with Savhera?
Oh my gosh. There's so many things that are both so many things that are related to scaling our business, but more than that, scaling the social impact. And then more than that, developing a movement really of businesses that get it, right? That are on the same page. Like, I want this to be a proof of concept. I'm sick and tired of people being like, well, you're not going to be able to do that and make a profit. Like, you should just be a nonprofit.
Nope.
No.
Mm-mm.
No. I fully disagree. Like, I could not disagree more. And so I'm very, very excited about creating a movement of for-profit businesses that are willing to take a chance on otherwise unemployable people, to invest in them, teach them the skills that they need to be successful, not only in your company, but transferable skills that allows them to reach for the stars if they choose to at some point in time in the future. So, here's the thing. Companies have training programs and invest in their people all the time, right? All the time. It just so happens that it's people that already have some skill that the company needs from them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why not invest in people through your business that don't necessarily already have the skills, but you believe have the potential to have all of those skills and more. And once we do that as a society, I think it will change the game. I think it'll change the conversation. I don't think our current economy I don't think we have the structures that we need right now to make this happen. But I think that going forward, I want to be part of that conversation and part of a movement that creates new structures for new types of businesses to really literally change the world. So
add me, sign me up. Where's my membership? This is what I am speaking the most about right now, is to current entrepreneurs. There are people seeking right now, after everything that's happened this year, what value am I bringing to the world? What is my meaning? What is my purpose? Right. And I do business coaching, and I'm the one thing that I'm hammering right now is that we have the resource of being entrepreneurs. We have the resource of knowing how to run businesses. So now we have the privilege to say, I can employ anybody I want, right? And I can invest in anybody that I want. And the outdated skills pyramid that is in the jobs course that I teach, that when I get to that page, I'm like, this is where we're going to tell you it's different than what it used to be. Give me an entry-level employee that has no skills, but is willing to work hard and be the most grateful employee that I have. And I can train them to run the company. Right. Yep. So I want to this is what I want to see. Money makes the world go round. And I watch nonprofits. The biggest struggle constantly is providing the bed, keeping the roof over the head, keeping the lights on, keeping the medication, paid for. And they're just constantly having to literally beg and plead for the donations. And so that's what I told, when we talked and we kind of brainstormed, I'm like, okay, maybe I can't give someone to go, donate $50 right now to this nonprofit, but maybe they'll buy a hat that benefits this, organization.
Yeah. I have a BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal, hairy?
Yes.
Why hairy? I don't know. But anyway, the BHAG that I have for Savhera is actually twofold. Well, actually, no, I'll just say the BHAG that I have for Savhera is profit sharing.
Yes.
So make it an employee-owned company.
Yep.
And that has never been done in the social enterprise space. It has never been done with the population that we are employing. And I think that model literally could change the world. And I'm so excited about it.
Let me tell you where you're on to something with this. So I have a phenomenal CPA. She's amazing and I love her. And I don't buy shoes without asking her permission first. So I go to her with any idea, like I trust my life with her. And so when I had this idea, I went to her and she'll say, like, whatever business we're setting up, she'll give us, her opinion, like this good time, bad time, good partnership, bad partnership type of thing.
Yeah.
So I went and sat down, laid out the plan. I said, this is what I'm wanting to do with the hat company. I'm wanting to employ traffic survivors. Eventually, I would like to have a place where I can house them and they can work in the same place they live, kind of thing, and remove obstacles. But how do I need to set this up? What type of legal business entity do I need to go with? And I would like to give them some ownership, And she said, for starters, you're going to do a for-profit and not a nonprofit. She was like, because she was like, so many people are not running nonprofits the way that they're actually supposed to. There's a lot of red tape. And so she said, plus there's nothing wrong with making money and, off of a good cause.
Yeah.
And so she went from that because she's like, because then you can pour it back in, right? And build out bigger and more. But she said, set it up as this escort and as a social enterprise for profit, and then eventually move into profit sharing. And that way you're giving survivors ownership in it. So I'm like, yes, a big advocate.
Yeah. So we registered as a public benefit corporation, which that's a brand new business designation in the state of Texas as of 2017. And so that's how we registered. And then we're also in the process of, we're pending B Corp certified right now because we haven't been operational for a year yet, but come September, the pending should move to full-fledged B Corp. But that still doesn't get at some of the issues of running a public benefit corporation, like, for example, attracting investors. Still to this day, when you say the word impact investing, most people think nonprofit.
Yeah.
That you're making an investment, but it's a social investment. It's in a social outcome instead of a monetary outcome. I believe that impact investing should mean impact investing. So like you're not just investing in impact, you're also investing in return, right? So it's still both a financial and a social return. I believe that that's possible. But the problem is that the current current investing vehicles that we have available to us as businesses are not as available for public benefit corporations. And so we need new structures, new financial structures, new investing vehicles for public benefit corporations. And so that's what I want to be a part of. I want to just blow up the system and be like, we all know the current system isn't working. Like it's not working. And greed at the top and at the bottom is what created the financial crisis in 2008. People were getting loans that they never should have gotten. And the people at the top were giving them the loans that they never should have gotten because they wanted to see more of a return. They're all cooked. I mean, it's greed. It's ultimately greed. I think that we can still make a profit and we can still make money if we're willing to do it in such a way where it's a little bit more even, where the people at the top are not making, 1,000 times what the person at the bottom is making, where there's profit sharing, where there's incentives to work hard monetarily for everybody. that's what I'm super excited about.
Oh, I love that. We're going to have to like sit down and grab a cup of coffee because I think that we could talk for a very long time.
I know, girl. I know.
I have really appreciated the interview today. Like, it's been awesome. And I appreciate your time. I never, ever undervalue someone sitting down and chatting with the audience. If you could leave just one thing that you would have my audience know today, what would be one thing you would like to leave them with?
I would like to leave them with my favorite thing to say, which is use your privilege to privilege others.
What a wealth of knowledge Vanessa is. I love what she said about being able to use our privilege to scale businesses and create an impact. If you enjoyed this conversation, do me a favor, head over to iTunes, write a review, give us a rating. We'll take 5 stars if you're feeling generous, and tell all your friends about us. By the way, have you picked up the Power Project book yet? Because it's out in the world and you're going to hear all about my personal creation of the Power Hat Company. Speaking of the Power Hat Company, have you gotten a hat pre-ordered yet? So you can get the book at thepowerprojectbook.com, and you can check out the hats over at thepowerhatco.com. You can find Dr. Vanessa Bouché over on Instagram, and you can also check out Savhera. It's an amazing company. I know you're going to love their products. I can't wait to chat with you next week, but until then, go out and live your best purpose-filled lives.